So I've disappeared for a while because, summer break, that happens. Lots of vacation stuff going on, but also stuff about this YouTube channel that I've made that actually started growing, and it's interesting to see. And I check the comments, and some people have asked for some wild stuff like Devastator tutorials or a walking bumblebee. And, I do think that the first bumblebee tutorial was kind of bad. I'm probably gonna redo it, and the day I redo it is today because I figured out how to make a walking one. Um, it's a bit glitchy and wonky, but it does work. By me saying that it works, I mean that it can walk as well as transform. Although the walking is a bit wonky, it works enough for me, and I'm happy with it. So this is it, quote unquote walking, and this is it, transforming. Now, the car mode is quite glitchy. As you can see, this wheel is just kind of doing whatever. But it all comes together to make this nice little okay-ish Camaro. And the wheels don't actually touch the ground, so I just made them ice, and I put engines on the back to make the car drive. I also need engines, these little propellers on the underhood right there on the front to keep the front of the car down because that's where all the helium is to make the robot walk. So there's issues with this kind of build, as it will start flying if you go on a ramp, which is weird but kind of fun. So if I ever figure out how to fix these issues, I'll probably make a short video on it or something. But I think this is pretty cool. I'm happy with this. It's flying away now, but it can transform back, just to show the capabilities of this. It does work. Sort of. It's kind of glitchy though, or quite glitchy. Because, I feel like Playing Crazy wasn't meant for things that were this complicated, but it still works, so. I feel like making this thing, I was really pushing the limits of this game. But once I built it, I realized that it was pretty fun to build, and I should teach other people how to do it. Now, like my first video, I'm not going to make step-by-step, one block per block build, like a rebuild of this whole thing to teach you guys how to make one, because that's just going to give me a migraine. It was hard enough already making this one. I'm just going to explain the steps I took, but in more detail and with better presentation than my first video, because my first video I feel like wasn't as good, and I feel like I could have done it better. Okay, so step one of this build is that you'd want to figure out what you're building. Okay, I wanted to build Bumblebee, so I have an idea of how big he is, what mechanics are in his transformation, and how he's going to turn into a car. It also gives you an idea of size and scale. If you look it up, Bumblebee from the Michael Bay films is 16 feet tall. If you were to build another character like Optimus Prime, he'd be about almost twice his height, because Optimus Prime is canonically 28 feet tall. Okay, maybe not that tall. Like this tall, because he turns into a semi-truck. With the scaling of how big this Bumblebee is, Optimus Prime would probably be this big. Of course, you don't have to make him this big. This is just the scaling of what I've built, or how I build my Transformers. So yeah. Step 2, you want to figure out, or you want to build simple mech legs. And if you don't know how to do this, I suggest watching Falcopotato on YouTube, because they make very good tutorials and just videos overall about mechs. I mean, not many tutorials, just one tutorial, but I learned a lot from that tutorial. If you make that tutorial build, you can examine it and figure out how mechs work. The basics of how a mech works is that there's helium blocks at the top, and at the bottom there are ballast blocks in the feet, And there's also engines, propeller engines that go down with W and S. With this motion, the motors and the legs and all that. You press W, moves 1 foot forward. You press S, moves 1 foot forward, and it alternates feet. That's how the basics of making a walking mech are. But the difference with this guy is that the legs, the motors in the knee joints, hip joints, and well, actually, there's no feet joints, but you know it still works. So I'm fine with that. So knee joints and hip joints, all the motors are not powered. This makes it so they're floppy by themselves, and it allows for better control when you want to transform the robot because you don't want it going all everywhere and stuff. So to make the legs move properly, all you need is some kind of propulsion. For this one I use propellers because the legs are quite heavy. Using the same principle as the engines down here is that W and S power them and they alternate. So on each like lower leg bit or the calf, you need an engine that is going upwards and one engine that is going forwards. What this does is it pushes this part of the leg up, which forces the knee to bend and pushes the whole leg up in a walking motion. And it seems pretty realistic to me, so I'm happy with how that works. So yeah, if your mech is smaller, then you'd probably want to use something like snow blasters, unless you don't have them, because sometimes propellers are too high power for a smaller build. But yeah, that's the basics of how the legs work. They're, you know, pretty simple. I'll build some quick ones right here. So you got, you know, the feet. These are very bad feet, but I don't care. Is that 4 blocks? Okay. Actually, I'll make them 3. I'm gonna make the width in between them 3. And then I'll make the, you know, this is basically what I've built to my left. These are just simple, like these are extremely simple. These are not good legs, but just to give an idea, power these off so that if I were to put like this on here and I go into the game, it should fall over. Hello. Maybe I need to touch it. See the pieces that I attached with the unpowered motors move around freely without having to be powered on. Now I'm just gonna quickly, instead of that, I'm gonna put a text 1x2 on here. And then I'm gonna start working on the knee joint. Not joint, the knee inhibitor, I guess. This prevents the knee from bending all the way backwards. It's basically like a kneecap on a person. It prevents you from bending your leg backwards the wrong way. That's what kneecaps are for. And basically this will help with walking to prevent the leg from acting all strange, because there needs to be a bit of resistance so that when the leg goes back, it pushes, and you see it keeps the leg straight so that the other leg can be put forward and it can have this walking motion. This very weird walking motion, I'll admit. He's doing the splits a lot, but it works. And next we'll just add the thighs. And then 2 more motors here. And then a block. And I'll make sure to make these unpowered. Hello? Okay. And then I'm going to go to the helium block and just add a couple here. I'm going to go down here and put ballast blocks in the heels, because that's kind of where the center of mass of the helium is. You want to try and keep the ballast and the helium in the same kind of line. Make it more stable. And I'm going to make this like 2, because I don't want it to be super heavy. And since this is pretty small, I'm going to use snow blasters. I'm going to put 1 forward and 1 up. And I'm going to alternate, so this one will be on-off only mode, W and S. So the left foot will go forward first, and then I'll switch it around on the other leg. And then now I'll put some propellers in the feet just to push them down. And since we know that the left foot is going to go forwards first, then these need to turn on with on-off only mode and reverse thrust with increasing power be W and decreasing power be S. And then you just swap it for the other ones. So now we have an alternating kind of walking motion. So let's test it. So we have this, and we're going to press W, and look at that, it kind of walks. Now of course this is unstable because this is a very quick build, but it has the same kind of motion in it. I think I need more weight in the feet. It seems to spin around a lot, which is an issue, which is why I have these little propellers in the arms for Bumblebee to control his walking, but I think it works pretty well. This one is a bit wonky though, so I'm thinking I might have to make the ballast blocks heavier, so like not that much. 5? I think that's the weight for Bumblebee, so I'll try that. But I think, yeah, that looks better. But now the feet don't really lift forwards, which is an issue. Right? It's all about testing things and switching around variables until you get the right result, the result that you're looking for. So yeah, it looks wonky now, but once you add the upper body, it kind of stabilizes it a bit. Maybe put some helium in the arms or something that might help it. And always have sideways control with A and D if you're on computer. I don't know what you'd do if you're on mobile because I don't know how that works. But you guys will figure it out. It's fine. So now that you have this kind of these simple legs, you want to take your idea of what transformer you're building and think of a transformation sequence that doesn't bend the knee joints or any hip joints or really any joints in the legs. With Bumblebee, his legs they're always straight. They have to be straight or else it'll just make it even glitchier than it already is. And basically, the hip joints and the knee joints stay straight throughout the whole build, throughout the whole transformation. As you can see when I press my transformation button, they stay completely straight and they fold into the back of the car. And then, well, they come together like this. And then I activate the engines on the front, and there's the car mode. And it is quite glitchy, but it'd be a lot glitchier if you had the legs bend, which I just try to avoid for now. Maybe I'll make a video on it in the future, who knows. You know, it's hard to think of ideas sometimes. So yeah, I think I broke it. Oh, okay, there we go. But yeah, that's the basics of it. Keep the legs straight through the transformation. Have other things, go and try to be fluid with the transformation. This is pretty similar. If you're having trouble finding transformation sequences, this is similar to a toy I have, and that's where I get the ideas for most of my transformers. Is I look at toys because that gives you an idea of how real people have designed transformation sequences for toys and stuff. So, I kind of went off the step idea, to be honest, but I guess this is step 3, is once you figure out a transformation sequence, just kind of build anything. Just kind of play with your design. Like, this isn't my original version of Bumblebee. I made one before this that didn't work out. It kind of turned into like a truck thing that didn't work. So I deleted it and remade it, and then I got this one, which is a lot better, and it worked out for me, and I'm happy with it. So that's what I suggest you guys do, is you just kind of experiment with things. The whole point of this game is to be creative and to use your own ideas, think of how things work, and you'll be able to create cool things like this eventually. You just work hard. Like, here, I'll show you guys. This is my first Optimus Prime build, and it looks terrible, in my opinion. It's not that good. You know, there's gaps basically everywhere. I mean, most of my Transformers have gaps, but that's just because, for the sake of the transformation. How do you turn off the... Oh, there we go. But now, I figured out how to make him walk as well. Now, I haven't done that with Optimus yet. I might redo him again, because this is my old Optimus. I have a new one. Who knows, I might make a new one, and he can't stand up. No, stand. There we go. I try to make it as movie accurate as possible, with it being as small as possible, and it, you know, you can see where the design is coming from, but it's not very good. And his legs are kind of short, his arms are too big, and it's just all wonky. But it's not super glitchy, which is what I'm happy about. My newer Optimus Prime is super glitchy, but it also looks a lot better. So if I go all the way to the start here, I have Optimus Prime. This is my new one. Looks a lot better. It's bigger, more complicated, and a lot laggier. So yeah. Now, this one, I used a lot of, you know, there's hover thrusters there. Used a lot of things, but there's still huge gaps in it, like I can see through it. But you can see the truck, where the truck is. I could always cover this up and put it somewhere, but I'm too lazy for that. This build took a long time, like a year of development or something. And this is the transformation, a lot more complicated. It is also based off a toy, of quite a complicated toy, which is why it's glitchy and it's doing this here and all that, but it looks a lot better, in my opinion. It looks way more movie accurate, but, you know, it's super complicated and it's all glitchy and stuff, which is something that I don't like about it, but it's one of my favorite Transformers, one of my best ones. And the reason I'm so happy about the Bumblebee build is because now I can build Transformers that aren't just statues. I can build ones that walk around, because this one just stands still. He doesn't do anything. And well, I guess he does that, but that's not really what I want him to do. But now I can make ones that can walk around, and by far, like Bumblebee is the only one I've built that can do that, because they are challenging to build. It was a challenge for me when I built one, and it'll probably be a challenge for you guys. But the whole point of this game, like I said, is to create, have fun, and, you know, just kind of play around with what tools you're given. That's kind of what I think the creator intended, possibly, is to, you know, bend the limits of what you're given. That's what I've done with my builds. So, yeah, I guess that's the video. Kind of an informational thing. I think maybe my next video will probably be like, how to, like, the mechanics I use normally in my builds. So, like, what kind of rotations I use for the motors, how, like, the angles and stuff that I go off of most of the time. Kind of how do you, maybe go more in depth with things, but I'm pretty happy with my walking Bumblebee and how it looks. And yeah, I'm also happy that my channel actually got more than 2 views. Very cool. So yeah, I guess like and subscribe. See y'all later.